Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 34th Annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Remembrance Day. We're not coming together and fellowship today as we have in the past, when it was customary for us to meet and have lunch and fellowship at the MLK Holiday Luncheon. Instead, we're meeting virtually due to the restrictions placed on us by COVID-19 and its various viruses. That said, we are still mindful of the impact that Dr. King made on this nation. I and others who you will hear from shortly have gathered today to honor his achievements that have had such an impact on our nation. That Dr. King's achievements, which brought about so much change, was done through nonviolent actions is remarkable. When so many today believe that only brutal and vicious deeds can affect improvement, his insistence on a peaceful approach to create change was remarkable. His ability to install a change of heart in the people who view others that may have had different skin color, different education, different social backgrounds, or economic station in life, awakened the nation to reassess the way that we treat and respect people. Our nation has benefited greatly from Dr. King's commitment to change, but there's still a lot to be done. There are hundreds of memorable quotes by Dr. King. I like this one. An individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. Think about that. I want to pay special thanks and recognition to those members of the Commission on Community Relations and Development who worked diligently throughout the year to improve Goldsboro for the betterment of all citizens. The efforts to promote diversity and equality is never ending for these individuals. Thank you.
Hey guys and girls, it's your girl Green Fire Motivation, aka Judy Owens, and the name of this piece is The Community. You don't know me and I don't know you. Standing on this stage, I have nothing to prove. But guess what? You do. See, my message is to empower you, to give you permission to improve the things in your community that need your attention too. Is that the phone ringing? Answer it. It's the community on the line. The Word of God says, if you seek, you shall find. Those in the community who are on their grind, behind a veil of humility is where they hide. Working while shedding blood, sweat, and tears to shield you from negativity, criticism, and calm the citizens' fears. United we stand, divided we fall. An open hand holds nothing, but a strong fist strikes a mighty blow. Each one, teach one, reach one, teach one. The work of the Goldsboro community is never done. Even though you don't have a title, your participation is still vital. Find your niche, work, make it fit. Each hand helps us all. Not stick by stick, but brick by brick, building joy, love, and peace. And everyone in the community has someone to lean on when they're feeling weak. A public service announcement from the Goldsboro community leader says it all starts with me. Thank you.
There's a great camp meeting.
There's a great camp meeting. Oh, a great camp meeting in the promised land. Oh, walk together, children, don't you get weary. Walk on, my children, don't you get weary. Just go walk together, children, don't you get weary. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Oh, walk together, children, don't you get weary. Walk on, my children, don't you get weary. Just walk together, children, don't you get weary. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Walk on and never tire. Walk 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 and never tire. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Oh, walk together, children, don't you get weary. Walk on, my children, don't you get weary. Just walk together, children, don't you get weary. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Sing on and never tire. Sing 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 and never tire. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Oh, walk together, children, don't you get weary. Walk on, my children, don't you get weary. Just walk together, children, don't you get weary. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Shout on and never tire. Shout 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 and never tire. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. Oh, walk together, children, don't you get weary. Sing on, my children, don't you get weary. Just shout together, children, don't you get weary. There's a great camp meeting in the promised
Martin Luther King's Day is recognized as a national holiday on Dr. King's birthday. But for me, the holiday pays homage and represents honor to a lot of African Americans who fought the fight of justice, human and civil rights for many decades, long before Dr. King received the torch to carry. I too, Langston Hughes. I too sing America. I am the darker sister. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. I laugh, eat well, and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. December the 5th, 1955, Dr. King spoke to his supporters of the Montgomery bus boycott, and I quote, "If you will protest courageously and yet with dignity and Christian love, when the history books are written in future generations, the historian will have to pause and say, there lived a great people, a Negro people, who injected new meaning and dignity into the veins of civilization. There lived a great people, a Negro people, who injected new meaning and dignity into the veins of civilization," unquote. I too am America.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start by thanking Mayor Ham, Mr. Salmon, and Ms. Williams and her entire team for putting this event together. I'd also like to thank my co-presenters here on the stage, as well as our youth who have sung so beautifully today. I really was inspired by listening to them sing today. But I want to thank them again, Ms. Williams, for scheduling this event to honor a true hero and a great man who sought to be a tide to lift all boats and elevate us all, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I bring you greetings from your care team at Wayne UNC Healthcare and our board of directors. I trust that you are well or recovering as we continue to struggle with this 2-year challenge brought on by COVID-19. I also trust that your projects on this day of service are going well. As I prepared my remarks for my talk today, I truly toiled over how to adequately represent such a great leader, acknowledged around the globe for his example, tolerance, and love for everyone, friend or foe, alike or different, no matter the race, color, or background. It was fascinating to me to see the pictures, observances, and memories of Dr. King around the globe during my Army international assignments. It showed the profound impact that his short but very significant life had on the entire world. I'm still in awe of his insistence on peace, change, and equality for all. This next slide I borrowed from the Associated Press. On October 14, 1964, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King became, at the time, the youngest Nobel Peace Prize laureate at the age of 35. Pictured here during his acceptance speech in Oslo, Norway on December 11, 1964, he stated, quote, "The beauty of genuine brotherhood and peace is more precious than diamonds or silver or gold." He also donated every dollar that he received as a result of this unprecedented recognition. It's astounding to me for a man to be so profoundly focused on peace when he was continuously met with such acrimony and hate. He, however, never advocated for violence, even against those cowards that would ultimately take his life on that dark, dark day on April 4th in Memphis, Tennessee, less than 4 years after this picture was taken. I've been blessed during my lifetime to visit many places around the world that have imparted their mark in history. It has also been a sobering feeling when I've visited these landmarks in world history as I reflect on how small and petty my perceived problems and concerns really are. The Lorraine Motel where Dr. King was assassinated is one of those very landmarks. I was blessed to serve as the president of Methodist South Hospital in Whitehaven, a few miles from the Lorraine Motel, which is now the National Civil Rights Museum. This next slide I borrowed from Reuters news service, and it's a picture outside of the Lorraine Motel, which is now the National Civil Rights Museum. I strongly recommend visiting the museum if you have the opportunity because it gives you a remarkable view of the life of a great leader, example for all, a father, a husband, an incredibly patient, tolerant, and forgiving man. Although a pungent reminder of the tragic way in which his life was cut short, the National Civil Rights Museum is a fitting tribute to his life and a great unfiltered history lesson for us all. The lessons are many, but I'd like to share 3 things that I personally took away from my time, which is, by the way, far too short given the centuries of information and documentation displayed and presented in the museum. First, life is too short to spend it hating someone no matter what they do. This next slide I took from Stanford University and also Reuters news service. I am a mama's boy, I have to admit that. But something that my father and my grandfathers taught me is that I should never lower myself to the level of those that would do me wrong. They never used those exact words, but over the years that they imparted their fatherly and grandfatherly guidance, patience, and advice, this quote by Dr. King truly summarizes what they attempted to teach me and make me the man that I am today. I think that we can all agree that we have far too much hate today, and if asked to verbalize why, too many of us, if we took a real step back, would see the futility and destruction of our fixation on our perceived and sometimes non-substantive differences. While in jail in Birmingham, Dr. King penned an open letter to the local clergy that disapproved of his complaints about segregation. In this letter, he states, quote, all segregation statutes are unjust because segregation distorts the soul and damages the personality. It gives the segregator a false sense of superiority and the segregated a false sense of inferiority. Dr. King understood the potentially irreparable psychological damage caused by the adherence to the fictitious foundations of racism and ultimately lost his life attempting to share that knowledge with everyone. This next slide I took from Forbes magazine. To me, civility is a measure of professionalism as I think of the example that I want to display for my daughter and son with whom God has blessed me and my wife. I want them to possess more patience and greater willingness to understand others than their father. Different is not necessarily bad, and as empirical research often shows us, we have a lot in common. Those common points of interest should serve to join, not separate us. Last week, someone mentioned to me that they'd read a study that suggested that 18 seconds is too often the extent of our attention span. She told me, and had even demonstrated this with her own team, that our perception of time is often inaccurate. Additionally, we sometimes only listen to a few short words before beginning to formulate our response, and often our rebuttal. I've taken her comments to heart and now try to listen more than before to better understand and improve my communication with others. This next slide I took from the Associated Press. Again, Dr. King was a man before his time, and even at a very young age, often understood people better than they understood themselves. Unfortunately, this true knowledge, leadership, and ability to unite people of all backgrounds and races, even during segregation, made him a target of many. This next slide I took from Five Towns College, and each of these are quotes from Dr. King. The second reminder that I took away from my visit to the National Civil Rights Museum was the importance of education. I remember once when I was really young and not doing well in school, and purely due to my apathy and laziness, my dad asked me a question, and he asked me if I'd done my best. For some reason, his question at that moment in time made me ashamed that I was wasting and taking for granted an opportunity that many, just one or two generations before me, would have loved to receive. To me, Dr. King in this quote suggests that education is more than imparting of data and information. That data and information must contain context and conscience to connect people of all races and backgrounds. He understood that history is written by the victors and therefore requires us to take a step back to control for this bias. I'm sure that we can all identify points in history that at the time seemed fine and appropriate, but when viewed through an enlightened lens, are at best offensive, divisive, and destructive. Some of these at the time well-meaning acts unfortunately disenfranchised some, discouraged them from seeking and the perceived unattainable, and ultimately separated us in ways that we never imagined. The Tuskegee syphilis study, which ended in 1972 when I was in grade school, is a tragic example of this fact and continues to haunt us to this day as misinformation, especially in healthcare, has cost far too many people their lives. This next slide I took from PBS, and it's a quote about health from Dr. King. We've come a long way in a short time since the Tuskegee syphilis study. We are far from done, but we've markedly increased diversity in education and research. As I read about 34-year-old Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, the developer of the Moderna vaccine, I couldn't help but think that Dr. King would be so proud of her efforts to help everyone, no matter their lot in life, to survive COVID. We're still not done, but our ethical standards via institutional review boards, or IRBs, peer-reviewed processes for research, and even the blinded research done right here in North Carolina by UNC helps to identify opportunities to improve health equity. These and other efforts continue to whittle away at inequality in healthcare. Again, there's more to be done, but we also must do more to care for ourselves. As your care team at the hospital and our doctors will tell you, I consider the care of every patient as I would the care for my loved ones that are here in Goldsboro and around the country in South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Washington State, to name a few, and my cousin who is still in uniform serving our country. That's how seriously I take our work at your hospital and in your clinics. We still have work to do, but please be assured that our goal at your hospital and in your clinics is to be there for you when you need us and to provide compassionate, high-quality care. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation developed a model a few years ago that suggests that the social determinants of health, what and how much we choose to eat, unhealthy consumption of drugs and alcohol, the lack of exercise, as well as other environmental factors and bad personal decisions, are far greater predictors of our health status than anything that our doctors can do to help us. As my doctor has counseled me, just making small adjustments in my diet, like lower sugar oatmeal, consuming more fiber, and walking at least 30 minutes a day, can greatly improve your health. Please consult your doctor and discuss what changes are most appropriate for you, but I challenge everyone to consider what more we can do to help ourselves to be healthier. This next slide I borrowed from the Chester County, Pennsylvania MLK virtual celebration of last year. The third observation that I took away from my visit to the National Civil Rights Museum was that I was reminded of the importance of perseverance. Never give up, do the best that you can, and do whatever you can to continue to move forward. I've had quite a few failures and setbacks in my personal and professional life. As a young man, my education and my Army career are the most important things to me. I so lacked balance and appreciation for all that I have that I took my lovely, patient, and supportive wife for granted. I can't say why, and I'm ashamed to this day for that period of my life, but I use that and remember that to try to move forward and be a better husband and now father today than I was yesterday. A key moment of clarity came for me when I failed to complete flight training while in the Army at Fort Rucker, Alabama in the early 90s. At 24 years of age, I'd returned from my one and only combat tour in the Gulf War as a medical platoon leader, was completing my first master's degree, completing my first command tour, and was selected to become a medevac pilot, all within my first 3.5 years as an Army Medical Service Corps officer and before even being promoted to captain. I was truly flying high, but it all came to a halt on the flight line one afternoon when I was afraid to continue training. Even before a fellow student had died in a night flight training accident, which is an incredibly rare occurrence given the safety protocols, screening, and requirements in Army aviation. Even before that, I was struggling to control my fear and my reactions during emergency procedures, which is a huge no-go in flight training. And what I can only describe as paralyzing fear, I kept envisioning that I would crash, and as a medevac pilot, I would cause crew members and my patient to lose their life. And that's something for which I could never forgive myself if it were to ever happen. As a result, I failed to complete my training, and the Army put me in a holding pattern for a few months until they determined my options and next steps. Those 2+ months seemed like an eternity as I assumed my Army career was over and pondered what I would do next with my life. At that point, I had planned to complete flight training, go to airborne school, go to air assault school, and then join a line medevac unit as a pilot, preferably in the 25th Infantry Division, the unit in which my father served as an infantryman during Vietnam. I didn't have a plan B, so those 2.5 months were more difficult for me. The Army ultimately decided that I would be a hospital administrator, continue my education, pursue a doctorate in the city of Birmingham, no less, and ultimately teach DoD and Homeland Security healthcare administrators as a professor in a program co-administered by the Army and Baylor University. Referring to Dr. King's quote, turns out I couldn't fly. I wasn't a very good runner, but I could do push-ups all day, okay? And I was an okay faculty member and even published a few peer-reviewed studies in the process. I share this experience in hopes that it will help someone that's struggling or encountering a major setback to keep moving forward. You have to keep moving forward. This final slide comes from the Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta. I would like to leave you with this final quote. dedicating his life to nonviolence and social justice. It is tragic that his life was cut short by those that represent and defend the antithesis of for what he stood. As we honor his life and legacy, this is a painful reminder of the power of hate and evil, as well as the love and good that he represented and wanted for us all. I'd like to read the final passage of Dr. King's letter from the Birmingham jail. Quote, "I hope this letter finds you strong in the faith. I also hope the circumstances will soon make it possible for me to meet each of you, not as an integrationist or as a civil rights leader, but as a fellow clergyman and a Christian brother. Let us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. And in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all the scintillity and beauty. Yours for the cause of peace and brotherhood, Martin Luther King, Jr." End quote. Thank you for your time today, and I pray that you and your loved ones and friends remain well and safe. Thank you.
50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of a Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize this shameful condition.
But there is something that I must say to my people, who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline.
There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We will never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in motels of the highways and hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long Negroes' basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped from their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating, "For whites only." We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like water and righteousness is a mighty stream.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together.
With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discord of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to walk together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for the freedom together, knowing that what we will be free one day.
And this will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring.
And when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last."
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, filled with the Saviour's glad hope, unborn has died, yet with the steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughter, out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shall